The restaurant was burning. Everyone ran out. She remembered a child locked inside. She ran back into the flames to save him. He called her Mom, and his Mafia boss father heard it. Let's go back a week. Enjoy. Aisha uses her key to unlock the heavy metal door. The familiar scent of the Golden Dragon restaurant washes over her nose. Yesterday's grease, sweet sauce, and air freshener. Silence. She flicks the switch, and a few dim lamps flicker on over the empty room. Her kingdom begins when everyone leaves. She begins in the main room. Her cloth glides confidently across the smooth surfaces of the tables, sweeping up crumbs and leaving damp circles. She carefully removes the chairs, placed upside down on the tables, puts them back in place, and wipes the backs. Her movements are practiced, almost automatic. The hum of a vacuum cleaner breaks the silence, and dust from the red carpet flutters in a beam of light from the window. She is tired, but this tiredness is familiar and almost calming. Everything is simple here. She just needs to tidy up. Suddenly, the sound of cars pulling up comes from the street. Aisha freezes. The door opens without knocking. Jin enters. He is short, dressed in a perfect dark suit. His face is motionless. Two silent men walk closely behind him, and between them, barely visible, trots a small boy. His son, Min. Aisha immediately lowers her eyes to the floor, pretending to work diligently with a rag. She knows the rules. Don't make eye contact. Don't attract attention. Out of the corner of her eye, she sees Jin's black shoes tapping rhythmically as they walk toward the VIP room at the back of the room. And then, Min's small, light-colored sneakers. The boy tries to keep up with his father, almost running. The door to the room closes. Aisha exhales and returns to her work, but now her ears catch every muffled sound coming from beyond the door. An hour passes. The cars drive away. Jean comes out alone, talking quickly on the phone, and disappears. The restaurant is quiet again. Aisha is washing the kitchen floor, and suddenly her nose catches a new smell. It's sharp, acrid, unlike the usual smell of burnt food. It smells of plastic and something chemical. She straightens up, listens. Silence. But the smell gets thicker. She puts down the rag, wipes her hands, and carefully walks toward the door leading to the main hall. The smell is stronger here. A light haze, almost invisible, is already curling through the air near the ceiling. Aisha's heart begins to beat faster. She turns her head toward the kitchen. A thick gray trail of smoke is already creeping out from under the kitchen door. She abruptly pushes the kitchen door open. A thick wave of acrid smoke hits her face. Aisha recoils, coughing, and covers her mouth with her hand. Through the haze, she sees a bright orange line rapidly creeping up the wall above the stove. Fire! It has already reached the range hood and is devouring the greasy film on the metal. The crackling and hissing are deafening. But that's not the worst part. Her gaze is drawn to the ceiling. A veritable tongue of flame is erupting from the ventilation grate directly above her. It bursts forth with a resounding whistle, as if an entire furnace were igniting in the darkness of the shaft. Sparks and flakes of soot rain down. This isn't just a fire on the stove. The fire has spread through the ventilation, which means it will soon be everywhere. My mind works at breakneck speed. Somewhere there, at the end of the corridor, a boy is locked away. The boy who timidly shuffled after his father. Adrenaline hits my temples. No time to stand still. Aisha runs away from the kitchen, slamming the door. Smoke already fills the space between the kitchen and the living room, spreading across the floor like an ominous fog. She runs to the wall by the main entrance, where a red fire alarm button is visible beneath a glass cover. Her fingers slam down on the plastic. The cover flies off. She presses the button, expecting the deafening wail of a siren and the flashing of a light. Silence. She presses the button again, furiously, several times in a row. Nothing. Just a dull click somewhere in the box. The system is dead. Perhaps it has never been serviced. Perhaps the wiring was one of the first to burn out. Desperation, cold and sharp, tightens her throat. But she can't allow herself to feel it. Aisha turns to face the room. Decorative lamps still glow in the far corner. There, at two tables, sit people, an elderly couple and a young man with a laptop. They can't see the fire, can't smell the smoke. Aisha screams, her voice hoarse and alien in the silence. "Everyone out there! There's a fire in the kitchen!" At first, they simply stare at her, uncomprehending. The young man takes off his headphones. The older man slowly turns around. And at that moment, the first visible puff of smoke emerges from under the kitchen door. It's thick, gray-black, and crawls across the floor like a living creature. In an instant, the room explodes with movement. Chairs crash to the floor. An elderly woman jumps up with a terrified cry. Her husband pulls her by the hand toward the exit, but they run not toward the main door, but deeper into the room, toward the restrooms, panicked and disorientated. The young man grabs his laptop and backpack and rushes around, unsure of where to go. His eyes are wide with terror. Aisha yells, pointing at the main door. She runs across the hall, trying to intercept the old couple. The smoke thickens. The smell of burning hangs in the air, acrid and disgusting. The elderly couple finally turns and runs, coughing, toward the exit. The young man rushes after them, clutching his equipment to his chest. Aisha throws open the heavy front door for them. The cold night air rushes in. People spill out into the street, their silhouettes disappearing into the darkness. She turns, scanning the room. Empty, seemingly empty. But her heart stops, and then begins to beat so hard it feels like it will burst from her chest. She looks at that very door in the back, the door to the VIP room. It's quiet, too quiet, and smoke is already beginning to creep up on it, licking the edges of the luxurious wood paneling. There's the door. Luxurious, dark wood, inlaid. Smoke is already enveloping its upper part like a gray veil. And suddenly, amid the wail of sirens outside and the crackling of the fire, a clear image appears in Isha's mind. A man in a dark suit emerges alone. He's talking on the phone. He disappears through the door. And behind him, 2 hours ago, were the small, light-colored sneakers scurrying. Her breath catches. Not from the smoke. The boy. The son. He's still there. Alone in this room as the fire consumes the walls around him. The thought doesn't require thought. It simply is. Solid and heavy as stone. She can't leave the child. She can't. There have already been too many empty spaces in her life, left by those who left or were taken. She won't be another one like that. Aisha looks around. The main exit is behind her, clear. The cool air of freedom beckons just 20 steps away, and before her is a narrow corridor leading to the VIP room. And this corridor is no longer gray, but orange with the glow. Flames from the kitchen, having passed through the vents, are already bursting out here, licking the expensive silk upholstery of the walls. Heat rolls across her face in waves. She runs, not toward the exit. She turns and almost falls, stumbling toward the cleaning lady's closet. Her fingers catch on the sink. She turns on the water, grabs the first cloth she can find, a large microfiber one, and shoves it under the cold stream. Water spills over the edge, soaking the floor. Aisha wrings out the cloth hastily, not all the way. The cold dampness penetrates her skin. She presses the wet cloth to her mouth and nose. The smell of chemicals and dust mingles with fear. As she exits the utility room, she sees that the corridor to the VIP room now resembles the entrance to a furnace. The flames have already spread to the decorative wood paneling, dancing and crackling, devouring the varnish. The smoke has become black and thick, curling near the ceiling, sinking lower and lower. Visibility is 2 meters, no more. Aisha crouches, trying to get below this toxic blanket. A wet rag over her face is her only defense. She crawls. No, not crawls. She moves low, hunched over, almost on all fours, across the hot floor. Her free hand slides along the wall, guiding her forward through the smoky shroud. Heat sears the skin of her arms and neck. Sparks hiss at her feet. Somewhere nearby, a section of ceiling tile falls with a crash, shattering into embers. She doesn't think about the possibility of not being able to get out. She thinks only about the door. It seems 100 kilometers away. Every step is a matter of willpower. The air behind the reg becomes hot, difficult to breathe. Her eyes water and sting, even if she keeps them narrowed. And then her palm rests, not on a smooth wall, but on a carved wooden surface. The door. She's found it. The handle is hot, but not red hot. Aisha grabs it, twists it, and leans her full weight on the door. It gives way with resistance and swings open. The room is plunged in semi-darkness. The main light is out, but a small decorative lamp in the corner glows, casting long, flickering shadows. The air here is still cleaner, but a thin wisp of smoke is already creeping toward the ceiling, forming a leaden streak. Aisha tears the rag from her face. Min! Her voice is a hoarse squeak. Silence. Boy, are you here? And then she sees him, in the far corner, behind a large table, where the shadows are deepest. He's sitting on the floor, his back and head pressed against the wall, his knees pulled up to his chin. His eyes, huge and dark, stare straight at the door, at her silhouette in the smoke. There are no tears in them, only pure, bottomless terror. It's the look of a hare frozen in the headlights. He's not crying. He's not calling. He's simply disappeared into himself, into the silence and stillness. Aisha quickly closes the door, cutting off the growing roar of the fire outside. She takes a few steps into the room, squatting down to be level with him. "Boy," she says, softer now, breathlessly. "Min, we have to go. Now. Give me your hand." He doesn't move. He doesn't blink. His small, white-knuckled hands clutch his own knees. Aisha slowly, very slowly extends her hand, not touching, just pointing. "Everything will be okay. Get up, please." Her words don't seem to reach him, but suddenly his gaze shifts from her face to her outstretched hand. For a second, something other than fear flickers in his eyes. Confusion, doubt, his breathing quick and shallow. Aisha doesn't wait. She carefully but firmly covers his small, cold fist with her large, working hand. Her touch seems to shatter the icy shell. He shudders, his lips twitch, and finally, the first quiet, silent tears begin to flow from his eyes. He doesn't pull away. That's the answer. Aisha pulls the boy by the arm. He doesn't resist, but he doesn't help either. His body feels stiff and heavy. She forces him to stand. He stands on weak, wobbly legs, still pressed against the wall. "Hold on to me," she says, and her voice sounds like a command, calm and firm despite the hoarseness. She throws the damp cloth she was holding over his head, trying to cover his hair and ears. She's already lost her defenses. She opens the door to the VIP room, and hell greets them. The narrow corridor she'd crawled through to get here no longer exists. In its place is a solid, roaring wall of fire. The flames are out of control, consuming everything: the velvet upholstery, the wood paneling, the ceiling beams. The heat is a physical blow. It sears the skin of her face and hands, causing her to instantly recoil. Breathing is impossible. The air is scorching, searing her lungs even from a distance. They cannot pass through this corridor. It is certain death. Aisha slams the door shut, cutting off the unbearable heat. She leans her forehead against the hot wood, trying to think. Her heart is pounding, and panic is creeping up her throat like cold tendrils. The main hall? But to get there, she'd have to cross this same burning corridor, or go through the kitchen. That's off limits too. And then, through the fog of fear, a map of this place emerges in her memory. Not an actual map, but a feeling, a familiarity with every back alley, every door she's opened 1,000 times with a bucket and mop, the kitchen, the freight elevator, and, yes, the back hallway, for staff, for taking out the trash and receiving food. It runs parallel to the main dining room, ending at a back door that opens onto a secluded alley behind the restaurant. The door is always locked from the inside with a heavy iron bolt. Hope, sharp and fragile as a blade, pierces her. "Another way," she says quickly to the boy, taking his icy hand again. "Follow me, quickly." She doesn't run back into the blazing hallway. Instead, she pulls him deeper into the VIP room, to another inconspicuous door, lined with the same material as the walls. It's the door to the mini-kitchen for the room's maintenance. She rushes in. It's cramped, and smells of spices and cleaning products. And there's another door here, metal, unfinished. A service passage. Aisha presses the handle. The door creaks open. Beyond lies darkness. Not just darkness, but pitch black, and the cold, stale air, already tinged with the familiar acrid tang of smoke. He'd made it here, too. She steps inside, pulling Min along with her. The door slams behind them, and they find themselves in complete darkness. Aisha pauses, trying to let her eyes adjust, but there's nothing to adjust to. Not a single ray of light, only the growing roar of the fire somewhere to the right, behind the wall, and the crackling. She crouches in front of the boy. "We're in the service corridor. He'll take us outside. But it's dark here. You have to hold on to me very tightly. Promise." He nods silently in the darkness. She feels the movement because she's still holding his hand. His fingers now cling to her palm with desperate strength. She straightens up. She holds him with one hand. She extends the other in front of her, feeling for space. One step, another. The floor beneath her feet is concrete, uneven. The air grows increasingly stale. The smoke, though not as thick as in the hall, already hangs here like a thick shroud. It stings her eyes and throat. Aisha suppresses a cough, knowing that if she starts coughing, she won't be able to stop. She moves slowly, from memory. The corridor should go straight ahead. About 15 steps further, there'll be a left turn. She counts the steps in her head, her free hand sliding along the rough, cold wall. It's her only reference point. Mun follows her, pressing his whole body against her, his rapid, shallow breathing audible even over the general din. Suddenly, her foot catches something soft and bulky, a bag of something. She stumbles, barely keeping her balance, and hears the boy gasp behind her. "It's okay," she whispers hoarsely. "It's just trash. Let's move on." The darkness and smoke erase all sense of time. A minute feels like an hour. The heat through the wall grows stronger. They seem to be walking along the very edge of the fire. At some point, she feels Ming's hand weaken in her grip. "Hold on," she says again, more to herself than to him. "Hold on tight. We're almost there." She hits the metal again, with all her might, desperately. A dull clang echoes in the silence of the alley. The bolt refuses to budge. From somewhere deep within, through the wall, comes a crash. It seems part of the ceiling in the hall is collapsing. The sound gives her movements a new, wild energy. She lowers her shoulder and slams it against the door next to the bolt, simultaneously yanking the iron handle toward herself. 1. Nothing. 2. The metal creaks. 3. With a sharp, rusty screech, the heavy bolt suddenly rips free. The door swings open under her weight, and they both, losing their footing, tumble out. Aisha falls to her knees on the cold, damp asphalt. Min falls softly beside her, wrapped in a blanket. The first thing she feels is cold. It envelops her heated skin like an icy sheet. Then comes the air, clean, sharp, without the taste of smoke or burning. She inhales deeply, and the inhalation triggers a fit of convulsive, tearing coughing. She chokes, her body arching, trying to expel all the accumulated dirt from her lungs. Her eyes fill with tears, but she immediately, through her coughing, reaches for Min. The boy lies on his side, not coughing. He simply lies there, eyes wide open, staring at the black sky, devoid of stars, only the glow of a fire somewhere above. Beyond the wall, his breathing is rapid and shallow, like a bird's. Aisha crawls toward him, sits up, and takes his shoulder. "Breathe," she wheezes, still out of breath herself. "Slowly. Inhale. Exhale. Like this." He turns his head and looks at her. There's no longer that glassy terror in his eyes. There's emptiness there, a deep, all-consuming exhaustion. But he listens. His chest begins to rise and fall a little more slowly. Aisha leans back against the cold brick wall behind her. A shudder runs through her, from her knees to her jaw. She hugs herself, but it doesn't help. The adrenaline recedes, replaced by a complete, universal exhaustion and the realization of what they've done. They're alive. They're outside. The silence of the alley doesn't last long. At first, it's a distant howl, somewhere on parallel streets. Then it grows louder, multiplies. Sirens. Many sirens. They sound different. The low, drawn-out wail of fire trucks and the sharper, staccato trills of ambulances. The sounds swell, merging into a deafening symphony of emergency. At the entrance to the alley, from the main street, the first flashing lights appear. Red, blue, white. They paint the brick walls in spasmodic, pulsating colors. The first fire truck enters the alley, blaring its horn. Another follows. Then an ambulance with a blaring red cross on its side. The chaos they'd just escaped now descends upon them from outside. Car doors burst open. Uniformed people begin milling around. Bright yellow firefighter suits, dark blue paramedics. Someone shouts commands. Fire hoses and hoses unfurl. Paramedics unload stretchers and bags. To Aisha and Mina, they sit in the shadows, away from the action. Two small, dirty figures on the asphalt. But then one of the paramedics, walking around the car, points a flashlight in their direction. The beam glides over Aisha, then over the boy. "Here!" he shouts, raising his hand. "There are people here! There are victims!" Two medics with bags run toward them. But before they've covered even half the distance, a new sound bursts into the alley. Not a siren, but the sharp, furious screech of brakes from several powerful vehicles. 3 black SUVs stop at the entrance to the alley, blocking part of the driveway. The doors open almost simultaneously. Gene gets out of the first car. He looks different than he did in the restaurant. He's not wearing a jacket. His shirt is unbuttoned at the neck. His hair is tousled. His face, always so inscrutable, is now pale and tense. He's not running. He's walking quickly, his strides long, his eyes darting along the alley, picking out details in the flickering lights. Firefighters, plumes of smoke from all the restaurant windows, paramedics. And then his gaze falls on them, on Aisha, leaning against the wall, and on the boy at her feet. His movement changes abruptly. He almost falls forward, accelerating, his feet barely touching the ground. His guards try to keep up, but he overtakes them. Aisha sees him approaching. She tries to stand, out of respect or fear, but her body won't obey. She simply freezes, watching as this man, the one the entire neighborhood had avoided, rushes toward them, his face contorted with an emotion unfamiliar to her, pure, uncontrollable fear. Jin drops to his knees on the pavement right in front of Min, ignoring the dirt, the paramedics, who have already run up and stopped hesitantly. He grabs the boy. Not picks him up, but grabs him, wraps his strong arms around him, and presses him to his chest so tightly, as if trying to push him back inside himself, into safety. Min freezes at first. Then his small body, which had seemed stiff until then, suddenly goes limp. He makes a quiet, muffled sound, not a cry, more like a groan of relief, and buries his face in his father's neck. His little hands clutch the fabric of Jin's shirt. Jin closes his eyes. His jaw is clenched tightly, the muscles in his cheekbones twitching. He rocks back and forth on his knees, clutching his son, and this rocking motion is the simplest, most ancient of comforting movements. He whispers something in his ear, very quickly, in his own language. The words are inaudible, but their abrupt, muffled notes are audible. He doesn't look at Aisha. He doesn't thank her. He doesn't ask questions. At this moment, nothing and no one exists for him except this tiny bundle of life in his arms, which smells of smoke and fear, but which breathes, which is alive. All his power, all his cold authority, has evaporated, leaving only a naked paternal instinct, trembling with the horror he's endured. Aisha looks away. She feels like she's watching something too personal, too naked. She looks at her shaking, dirty hands lying in her lap. Paramedics stand next to her, waiting for this scene to end so they can do their job. Somewhere behind her, fire hoses hiss, battling the flames. And here, on the cold asphalt, in the flickering light, a small island floats. Two people who have found each other again. This moment feels like an eternity, and a moment at the same time. Jin holds his son, his world narrowed to a pinpoint. Medics in dark blue uniforms stand patiently nearby, exchanging glances. One of them, a woman with short hair, takes a cautious step forward. "Sir," she says softly but clearly, "we need to examine the child." And the woman. They were smoke inhaled. Her words seem to gradually reach Jin. His rocking stops. He doesn't immediately let go of Min, but his grip loosens. He slowly pulls away to look at his son's face. Jin's hands are now on the boy's shoulders, as if checking to make sure he's safe. Min blinks, pulled from this cocoon of safety. His eyes, still huge and wet, wander from his father's face to the alley illuminated by flashing lights, to the strangers around him, and then his gaze finds Aisha. She's still sitting on the asphalt, leaning against the wall, looking at them. Her face is covered in dirt and grime. Her hair is matted, and her blue work uniform is stained and torn. Ming's gaze lands on her. He freezes. Something happens in his eyes. The emptiness and shock recede, giving way to something more conscious, more painful. He's just been through a pitch-black hell of darkness, heat, and terror. And all this time, from the first second in the VIP room to the final dash down the dark corridor, she was with him. Her hand that pulled him out of the corner, her voice that guided him through the smoke, her back, behind which he hid. In his confused, traumatized mind, where images of his mother have been erased by time and oblivion, this new, powerful image of protection, care, and salvation finds the only possible name, the only word that means safety, the only word he has for it. His lips, dry and cracked, move. At first, nothing comes out. Then a hoarse, strangled sound, more like a groan, escapes. He makes an effort, and the sound takes shape. A short, simple word, released on an exhale, full of absolute childish trust, and the release of all that monstrous tension that had been building within him all this time. Mother. He doesn't say it loudly, but in the chaos of sirens, screams, and the hissing of water, the word drops like a stone into smooth water. The medic freezes, her mouth open. Her partner looks back and forth, puzzled, from the boy to the grimy cleaning lady. But the most important thing is that Jin freezes. His hands are still on his son's shoulders. He slowly, very slowly, turns his head. He looks at Aisha. For the first time, he really looks. His gaze is completely different now. It's not the gaze of an absent-minded master passing a servant. It's the gaze of an appraiser, a scanner. He skims over every detail. He sees her simple, middle-aged face, marked by work and perhaps its share of grief. He sees her tattered uniform, her hands shaking from fatigue and the cold. He sees her posture, hunched, exhausted, but still holding a certain inner fortitude. He doesn't see a cleaning lady. He sees a woman who has just done the impossible, who entered a burning building for someone else's child, who led him through hell, who now sits here, unprepared, simply trying to catch her breath. And then he looks at his son, Mina, who, having uttered this word, seemed to have let off his last steam and now slumped limply, his face buried again in his father's shoulder, but his gaze, full of silent question and hope, was still riveted on Aisha. A rapid reassessment occurs in Jin's mind, accustomed to complex calculations, risk assessments, and split-second decisions. All the facts are here, right there. The child trusts this woman instinctively, the child who was silent, the child who feared his own nannies. He called her mom. It's not just a word. It's the key. It's the only thread he can grasp in this nightmare. Gratitude? Perhaps it's somewhere deep down, but that's not what drives them now. They're driven by the cold, practical calculation of a father who sees the only possible path to his son's recovery, and by a man accustomed to acting quickly and without further ado. Aisha, hearing this word, feels her insides collapse. She looks up at the boy abruptly, her eyes full of awkwardness and shock. She wants to say, "No, I didn't." She wants to correct him, but her gaze meets Jin's, and the words catch in her throat. There's no anger, no irritation in his gaze. There's that heavy, all-encompassing silence. Silence stretches between them for several seconds. The firefighters continue to extinguish the flames, the paramedics whisper. But here, in this triangle, time seems to stand still. Then Jin tears his gaze away from Isha and nods to his guard, who stands 2 steps away. He instantly steps closer. "Put them in the car," Jin says quietly, but very clearly, referring to the medics. "Let them come with us. They'll examine them there." He doesn't ask the doctors for their consent. He simply states the facts. They, understanding who stands before them, merely nod in agreement. Then Jin turns back to Isha. He's already risen to his feet, still holding Min, who's now almost asleep, exhausted. Jin looks down at her. His face is once again inscrutable, but the same determination remains in his eyes. "You'll come with us," he says. It's not a question, not even an offer in the usual sense. It's an order disguised as a statement of fact. There's no threat in his tone, but there's absolute certainty that this is how it will be. He's already decided. She's part of the equation now, part of the plan to save his son. He doesn't wait for an answer. He turns and, carrying the boy, heads for one of the black SUVs, the door of which has already been opened by another guard. He assumes Aisha will follow him, because there's simply no other option for her right now. Aisha sits on a hard leather sofa in a white room. Everything here is white. The walls, the ceiling, the cool marble floor. Even the light from the frosted lamps seems sterilely white. It hurts her eyes, accustomed to the dim lighting of the restaurant and the pitch-black darkness of the burning hallway. She sits motionless, her palms resting on her knees. One of the nurses, a smiling woman in a pink uniform, hands her a damp towel and a paper cup of water. Aisha automatically wipes her face. Dirty streaks remain on the white cloth. She drinks the water in small sips. The water is cold and clean. She sits and listens. The clinic is absolutely silent, despite the occasional soft footsteps outside the door. But this silence is different. It's thick, expensive, purchased. There are no sirens, no hissing fire, no screams. Only the quiet hum of the ventilation system. Her thoughts return to the boy. He was taken away into the depths of this white labyrinth as soon as they arrived. Jin followed the doctors without looking back. Aisha was brought here, to this waiting room, more like a hotel room, only without the comfort. She tries not to think about him, but images creep into her head, his wide eyes in the smoke, his icy fingers clutching her hand, his quiet word that still pierces her inside. Time passes slowly. Aisha looks at her hands. Under her nails, they're black with soot and dirt. Her uniform, once blue, is now gray-black, with a torn sleeve. She feels like a dirty spot on this perfect white background. A foreign body, accidentally brought here from another, noisy, sweat-scented world. The door opens without knocking. Jin enters. He is alone. The door closes softly behind him. He looks collected. He's wearing his jacket again, his hair neatly combed. But the shadows under his eyes have deepened, and a new, hard line has formed at the corners of his mouth. He stands there for a few seconds, looking at her. Then he comes over and sits in the chair across from her, across the low glass table. He doesn't suggest she leave or feel awkward. He just gets started. What's your name? His voice is quiet even, without emotion. Aisha. Last name? Jackson. Aisha Jackson. How many years did you work at the Golden Dragon? 3 years, on the night shift. Do you have a family? Children? The question catches her off guard. She looks down for a second. We were. A long time ago. Not now. He doesn't ask for details. He simply nods, as if checking off an invisible list. Tell me what happened. From the very beginning. How you found him. This isn't a request. It's an instruction. Aisha begins to speak. Her voice is quiet, hoarse from the smoke. She talks about the smell, the flames in the ventilation system, the panic in the hall. She doesn't embellish, doesn't play the heroine. She simply states the facts. I remembered the VIP room. The corridor was on fire. I went through the service exit. He sat in the corner, not moving. It was pitch dark. We were feeling our way. Jin listens without interrupting. He doesn't look her in the eye, but stares off into space ahead, as if visualizing her every step. His face remains unreadable. When she finishes, the room falls silent again. He slowly looks up at her. The doctors say he's in shock. His lungs are clear, no burns. His leg is just bruised. But he doesn't speak. Again. Jin pauses briefly. After his mother passed away, he didn't speak for 4 months. Then, gradually, he started. And today, he said a word. Looking at you. Aisha feels a shiver run down her spine. She wants to say it was an accident, a shock, that the boy got confused. But the words won't come out. He had nannies, 5 different women in the last year. Jean says this without reproach, simply as a fact. He was afraid of them. He turned away. He was silent. With you, he went. He called you Mom. He leans back in his chair, studying her. His gaze returns to that appraising one he'd had in the alley. I don't have time for sentimentality, Aisha Jackson. I have a business. And I have a son who's retreated into himself again. The doctors can give him pills. But they can't give him what he's asking for, what he saw in you. He paused, letting her understand the weight of his next words. I'm offering you a job, permanent. You'll live in my house. Your only job is to take care of Mina. Feed him, make sure he's dressed, walk him, be there. Become to him what he's already decided you are. Jin's voice didn't waver once. This wasn't an emotional offer. It was a business deal. You'll get room, board, and clothing. The salary will be 5 times what you'd get in a restaurant. And security, complete security for you and him. Aisha sits motionless. Her brain refuses to process the information. It all happened too fast. The fire, the rescue, this clinic, and now, this. She looks at this powerful, closed man, who invites her to become part of his strange, frightening life. I'm just a cleaning lady, she finally breathes out. No, he objects immediately, sharply. You're not just. A cleaning lady would have stayed outside. You came inside. You let him out. To him, you're no longer a cleaning lady. To him, you're the person who didn't abandon him in the fire. The choice is yours, but choose now. Jin's car, dark, quiet, and incredibly smooth, drives through the tall wrought iron gates. Aisha sits alone in the back seat. Jin left the clinic in another car, saying only, You'll be taken. Now she looks out the window. The gates close behind them almost silently. In front of her is a house. Not a house, but a mansion made of light stone, with columns and huge dark windows. It looks uninhabited, perfect, like a picture from a magazine, but there's not a single warm light, not a single sign that anyone is inside. The car stops on a circular platform in front of the entrance. The driver, the same silent guard, gets out and opens the door for her. He doesn't say a word, merely gestures toward the massive front door. Aisha steps out. The night is quiet. The air smells of mown grass and something foreign, precious. She climbs the wide stone steps. The door opens by itself, and it's opened by an elderly man in a formal dark suit. The butler. His face expresses nothing but polite detachment. They're expecting you, Miss Jackson. Please. His voice is quiet and impersonal. She crosses the threshold and freezes. The hallway is enormous. The ceiling is high. The floor is polished dark marble, reflecting the occasional spotlight. A staircase with wrought iron railings ascends. Everything exudes a cold order and emptiness. Not a single superfluous object, not a single speck of dust. The air is cool and sterile, like a clinic. The silence weighs on her ears, accustomed to the clatter of dishes and the hum of the city. She wants to take off her dirty sneakers so as not to stain the perfect floor. The butler leads her down a long, illuminated corridor deeper into the house. They pass closed doors, past vast, empty living rooms with slipcovers stretched over the sofas. The house feels like a museum where the exhibits have been forgotten. Your room is here. The butler stops at the door. The boy's room is next door. You've both already been examined by doctors. He's asleep. You're advised to rest. Tomorrow you'll be given clothes, and the schedule will be explained. He opens the door and steps back. Aisha enters. The room is spacious, bright, with its own bathroom. Simple but new clothes lie folded on the bed. Cotton pajamas, slippers. Everything is white. Everything is foreign. She stands in the middle of the room, hesitant to sit on the perfectly made bed. She feels less like a home and more like a beautiful, lifeless box. The morning begins with a quiet knock on the door. The same woman from the clinic, now wearing a white nurse's coat, brings breakfast on a tray. She smiles, but her eyes are attentive, searching. The boy is awake. He's not talking. But he's already up. You need to go to him. Min sits on the carpet in his room. His room is unlike the rest of the house. There are toys here, lots of them. Expensive ones, neatly arranged on shelves. But they look untouched. He sits, hugging his knees, looking out the window. When Aisha enters, he doesn't turn around. But his back tenses slightly. She doesn't know where to begin. She stands in the doorway. Good morning, Min. Silence. Breakfast has arrived. Shall we eat? He slowly turns his head. His eyes are wide again, but now they're filled not with panic, but with deep wariness. He looks at her as if she were a stranger. The word mom, spoken in shock, seems to have faded. Aisha feels a twinge of disappointment, but quickly suppresses it. Of course, that's how it should be. She comes over and sits on the floor, some distance away from him. Not closer, just close. She guards her plate of toast and begins to eat slowly, silently, simply showing that it's okay to eat. It's safe. He watches. After 10 minutes, he slowly, like a wind-up toy, reaches for his tray and takes a piece of apple. That's how their days begin. Silent. Aisha doesn't try to cheer him up or get him to talk. She's simply there as she helps him dress, choosing the simplest, softest clothes from the closet. She walks with him through the vast, well-kept garden, always staying within sight of the guards at the fence. She reads to him in English, without demanding an answer. He listens, snuggled up against her on the sofa, not looking at the book, but rather looking somewhere within himself. A week passes. One evening, when Aisha, she's listlessly flipping through the channels on the huge TV in the playroom, when Min suddenly comes over and silently lays his head on her lap. He just stands there, leaning heavily against her. She freezes, then gently places her hand on his back. He doesn't pull away. He sighs deeply, and his whole body seems to go limp. It's not a word. But it's more than a word. It's a key given in silence. Jin shows up on the third day. He arrives late, when Min is already asleep. He calls Aisha into his office, the only room on the ground floor she hasn't visited yet. The office is huge, filled with dark wood bookcases. He sits at a massive desk. He doesn't offer her a seat. Does he eat? The first question. Yes. Not much, but he eats. Does he sleep? Yes. Sometimes he wakes up, but then he falls asleep. Does he go to kindergarten with you? Yes. Jean nods, satisfied with the brief reports. Now, the rules. They're few, but they're mandatory. His voice becomes harder, more businesslike. The east wing of the house is off limits to you. Don't go there under any circumstances. My office and my floor, too. Don't ask any questions of my people. About anything. Don't tell anyone what's going on here. Not on the phone, which you don't have. Not to anyone else. No guests. You don't go out anywhere alone. Understood? Aisha nods silently. Her throat goes dry. These rules outline the boundaries of her new life clearly and unambiguously. She is in a cage. Safe, luxurious, but still a cage. Your job is him. Jin points a finger toward the floor. Everything else is none of your business. If you see something strange, you didn't see anything. If you hear something, you didn't hear anything. Your well-being depends on his well-being. And on your silence. He pauses, studying her reaction. Aisha stands straight, looking him straight in the eye. There's fear, but there's also something else, a stubborn determination to overcome. She didn't accept his offer for money or fear. She accepted it because of the boy who trusted her with his silence. I understand, she says quietly, but clearly. Jin looks at her for a moment longer, then nods, as if sealing their agreement. Okay, you can go. Aisha leaves the office. The door closes behind her with a soft click. She stands in the empty, illuminated hallway. She has a home now. She has a job, she has rules, and there's a little boy upstairs for whom, against all the rules of this strange world, she has become an anchor. She climbs the stairs, and each step echoes within her with the dull thud of a new, incomprehensible future. One afternoon, while walking with Min along the edge of the garden, Aisha notices a car. It's parked far beyond a high fence, on the side of a deserted road. The wind rustles the leaves, and through the gaps in the wrought iron fence, she sees clearly for a few seconds. A man is sitting behind the wheel. He's not smoking, not talking on the phone. He's simply looking at the house. His posture doesn't have the usual absent-mindedness of a casual driver. She feels it in her skin. His gaze is focused, searching. Min babbles something, pointing at the butterfly. Aisha quickly takes his hand. "Come on, Sitshane, it looks like rain," she says, unnaturally cheerful, and leads him back to the house, to the back door. Her back is tense. She feels an invisible gaze on her from the road. She doesn't tell anyone about this. The rules: if you see something strange, you didn't see anything. But from that moment on, the silence in the house seems different to her. Not empty, but alert. The peace is broken a week later. It's late evening. Min is already asleep. Aisha is reading in her room. And suddenly, click, the lights go out. All at once. Not just in her room. Outside the window. Pitch darkness. No streetlights, no lights in the garden. Complete, absolute silence. Broken only by the sound of the ventilation system shutting down. The silence lasts a second. Then, from the depths of the house, a muffled cry comes. The sound of quick, heavy footsteps on the marble of the lower floor. And another sound, a dull thud, like a door slamming or something else. Aisha's heart skips a beat, then starts pounding, echoing in her temples. She doesn't think. She jumps up from the chair and runs into the next room. She doesn't turn on the light. There isn't one. She gropes for the bed, covers the sleeping Min with the blanket with shaking hands, and scoops him up. He lets out a sleepy groan, waking from the sudden movement. "Quiet, darling, quiet," she whispers right into his ear, and there's such an unfamiliar steel in her voice that he instantly goes silent, clinging to her neck. She doesn't run downstairs. She doesn't call for help. An instinct, more ancient than any rules, screams at her, "Hide!" A chance discovery from a week ago flashes through her mind. While she was searching for a new pack of napkins in the second-floor pantry, her hand felt not just a wall, but a cold, indented metal plate deep in the shelving. Curiosity got the better of her. She pressed it, and part of the wall silently slid aside, revealing a small, empty safe room. She'd been frightened then and immediately closed it. But now this knowledge is her only hope. She slips out into the hallway with Min. It's dark, but her eyes have adjusted a little. The footsteps and strange sounds below grow louder. Another shout is heard, this time clearly angry, and the sounds of a struggle, furniture overturning, a thud. Aisha makes her way almost blindly to the pantry. She slips inside, sliding the door shut behind her. She feels the shelves, finds the same cold plate, and presses it. A barely audible hissing sound is heard, and a black hole opens in the wall. She carries Min inside, climbs in herself, and feels for the mechanism from the inside. The wall closes just as silently. They are swallowed by absolute, impenetrable darkness and silence. The sounds of the struggle are now completely inaudible. Min trembles in her arms but does not cry. He is frozen, as he once was in the burning restaurant. They sit like that for what seems like an eternity. Aisha counts her heartbeats. Suddenly, there's another click. Somewhere outside, behind the wall, a light comes on. Not everywhere at once. You can hear the clicking of circuit breakers. Then there's silence. Not alarming, but empty. The usual silence of a house at night. Aisha waits a long time. Then she carefully opens the secret door. The light is on in the pantry. The house is quiet again. She emerges with Min in her arms. The hallway is empty. But when they descend to the first floor, the scene changes. An overturned vase stands near Jin's office. Soil and flowers scattered across the floor. On the wall by the stairs is a long scratch, as if from a heavy object sliding along it. The door to one of the guest rooms is ajar, revealing a mess inside. Jin stands in the middle of the hall. He's wearing the same clothes he wore during the day, but they're rumpled. A fresh, dark bruise is blooming on his cheekbone. He's breathing a little heavier than usual. Beside him are two of his guards, one with a cut eyebrow. They're quietly conversing, but fall silent when they see Aisha descending, wide-eyed, with Min in her arms. Jin turns slowly. His gaze moves from his son, unharmed, to Aisha. He sees her pale but composed face. He sees that the boy isn't crying, but simply holding her tightly. Jin waves the guards away, and they leave silently. He approaches them, stops very close. His familiar stone mask cracks. There is more than just an assessment in his eyes. There is something heavy, tired, and new. Recognition. Where were you? He asks quietly. In the storeroom on the second floor. There is a room in the wall. Aisha answers just as quietly. Jin nods slowly. He knows about that room. You heard the noise and took him there. Yourself. You weren't confused. It's not a question. He looks at her, and there is no longer suspicion or cold calculation in his gaze. There is a fact that cannot be ignored. Twice, at a critical moment, this woman, without a second thought, saves his son. Not on orders, not for money, on instinct. Thank you, Aisha, he says. The words come out unusual, almost awkward, but they are said. For the first time, he says her name not as a label, but as an address. And he says, thank you for... Several days pass. The house is spotless again. All traces of disorder have disappeared. The bruise on Jin's cheekbone is turning yellow, but something has changed in the atmosphere. The rules remain, but the tension around Aisha has evaporated. The guards nod to her, meeting her gaze. The butler offers tea without the previous icy formality. At dinner, at the large table now set for 3, another shift occurs. Min, who has begun to speak a little, short words, requests, picks at his plate of pasta. He looks at Aisha, who is carving his chicken. Then Gina, who is looking through the papers, pushes his plate away. And simply, clearly, as if stating a fact, he says, Mom, give me some salt, please. A pause hangs in the air. Jin slowly lowers the sheet of paper. He looks at his son, then at Aisha. Aisha pauses, knife and fork in hand, ready to embarrass herself and correct him. But Jin says nothing. He merely picks up the paper again. But the corner of his mouth twitches slightly, almost imperceptibly. He disapproves. He accepts. The word now belongs to the 3 of them. It has become part of their strange world, built on ashes and danger. Aisha, struggling with the lump in her throat, silently hands Ming the salt shaker. One evening, after Min has fallen asleep, Jin calls her into his office again. There is no thick folder on the desk, but a simple white envelope. Sit, he says. She sits. He looks at her for a long time, as if collecting his thoughts. You have done your part, more than you have. Min is safe. He has become different, better. Jin points to the envelope. There is enough money here to start a new life. Anywhere. Away from all this, from this house, from my affairs, from the danger that sometimes comes to the door. You can take this and leave, tomorrow, with a clear conscience and with my gratitude. He pauses, letting the words settle. Or you can stay. But it won't be the same deal. Staying means accepting this world, recognizing that danger is part of it, and that your life is now forever tied to his. He nods toward the floor where Min sleeps. The choice is yours, truly. Aisha looks at the envelope. It means freedom. A quiet house somewhere by the sea, peace, security in the usual sense of the word. Everything one could dream of after a life like hers. Then she looks up and looks past the envelope, at Jin, at the man who learned to say thank you, and mentally, at the room upstairs, where the boy sleeps, who has learned to trust again. She doesn't reach for the envelope. She slowly pushes it toward the center of the table, back toward him. He's just started sleeping without nightmares, Aisha says quietly. He's expecting me to read him the next chapter of that dinosaur book tomorrow. If I leave, it will be like that fire again for him. Only I will become the fire I ran from. She sits up straighter in her chair. There is no fear in her eyes, only clarity. I'm staying, not because of money or fear. I'm staying because I need him. And I think he needs me, and you, too. Jin looks at her. There's no surprise in his gaze. There's a deep, tired satisfaction. It's as if he'd been waiting for these very words. He takes the envelope and puts it back in the desk drawer. The sound of the drawer closing is final. The old deal is over. Then welcome home, Aisha, he says. And for the first time, he calls this house home to her. A new start begins not the next day, but this very second. Aisha leaves the office, but now she doesn't feel like a guest or an employee. She goes to the kitchen and pours herself some tea, knowing it's hers in the cupboard. She goes upstairs and peers into Min's room, adjusting the blanket. She finds what she lost many years ago and didn't dare look for. Not just a job, but a place. Not just a child to care for, but a son. Not just a master, but a complex, closed person who has become Family. A family that she needs, and that needs her. With all its rules, silence, and shadows behind the high fence, this is her choice, and her world now.